Down the line and fair. It's in the corner and the Diamondbacks walk it off. Corbin Carroll wins it.
Welcome to another Valley Sports Plug Arizona Diamondbacks recap for July 4th to July 16th, 2023. I'm Chris Patrick, and with me today are my co-hosts Michael Benjamin and VSP Tallman, here to break it all down for you. So let's go ahead and get right into it. In the last 2 weeks, the Diamondbacks went a dismal 2-7 over 3 series. And after this last weekend series against Toronto, our overall record stood at 52-42 on the season, knocking us all the way down to 3rd in the NL West standings. Oh man. But let's take a look at how the last 2 weeks broke down for the Diamondbacks. Starting off the last 2 weeks, we were back at home taking on the New York Mets here at Chase Field. The D-backs lost all 3 games in that series, making it the first time the Snakes had been swept all season. Staying at home, the Pittsburgh Pirates would come into town for our second series against them this season. And just as they did in the Berg, the D-backs would win 2 of the 3 games in this one. After that, the Diamondbacks sent 4 players up to Seattle for the MLB All-Star Game, and the National League got the win 3-2 on July 11th. Returning to action after 4 days off, the Snakes would fly out to Toronto and take on the Toronto Blue Jays and the 2023 Home Run Derby winner, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Unfortunately, it seems like they left their ability to win baseball games back in the Valley. The D-backs were swept for the second time all season and the second time in 2 weeks, dropping all 3 games of this series. There's plenty to talk about here, but for now, let's go ahead and pass it down to Michael Benjamin for a deeper look at the last 2 weeks.
We start our recap on Independence Day and another free giveaway for Diamondbacks fans, providing 15,000 patriotic tees to attendees. There wasn't much for the Diamondbacks to celebrate during this series against the Mets, as Miguel Castro gives up a 7th-inning 2-run shot to Francisco Alvarez in Game 1. Andrew Chafin blows a save, also giving up a homer to Alvarez in the 9th in Game 2. And Ryan Nelson gets absolutely torched, giving up 7 in 3 innings. And the D-backs' impressive streaks to start the year of not being swept or shut out come to a screeching halt against New York. And in our final series before the All-Star break, the D-backs bounce back in a much-needed series opening win against the Pirates behind another stellar 7-inning performance from Zach Gallen. Corbin Carroll comes back from a shoulder scare and scrapes in the game-winning run in the 10th in Game 2. But the bats go cold in Game 3 as 6 starters go 0-for. But what a time to take another trip as we head to Seattle for the 2023 MLB All-Star Game, with Diamondbacks representatives aplenty, as Corbin Carroll, Zach Gallen, Lourdes Gurriel Jr., and fill-in Geraldo Perdomo put their skills on display. Gallen got the much-deserved starting nod for the NL, pitching a scoreless first. Carroll and Perdomo were hitless, but Gurriel Jr. might have had the play of the day, which ended up not coming to fruition as he has a power shot called back, as it was just on the outside of the foul pole. And the NL breaks a 9-game losing streak to the AL. We come back to regular season play in Canada, matched up with Dalton Varsho and the Toronto Blue Jays, but the rest got the best of the Snakes as they get swept for the second time of the year. The Blue Jays erupt for 5 runs in the 7th in Game 1. Zach Gallen drops his first game back after the break with no run support in Game 2. And stop me if you haven't heard this, guys, but another late-game offensive explosion from an opponent given up by the bullpen does in the D-backs to start the second half of play. It's a tough way to come out of the All-Star break to get swept, and it's dropped the Diamondbacks down to 3rd, but we know that there's still plenty of wiggle room as they're only about 2 games behind, but there are some concerns starting to show, but we're just too early into the second half to really get concerned too much, but we got to talk about it. So I got to pass it over to Tallman so he can let us know what he's seen over the last 2 weeks.
All right, guys. Welcome to Arizona, where the weather is hot as hell and our baseball team is ice cold. Man, losing 8 of the last 10 games. Man, we're averaging less than 3 runs a game in July. These bats have just totally disappeared. And normally I'm over here just complaining about pitching. But now we have a new problem to the 2023 D-backs is we can't figure out how to hit a ball. over the last couple games against the Blue Jays, the last one against the Pirates, it seemed like we could only score on a wild pitch or a fielding error. So we're in the slump right now. We all know slumps happen in baseball. It's all about how this team's going to come together as a group and kind of persevere over this current slump that they're in. One thing that could help them get out of this slump is maybe seeing a couple new faces come August 1st. So deadline talk, I know I've been like a broken record with that deadline stuff the last couple recaps, but how much of a buyer are we going to be? The real question is this even the year that we go all in on? Who knows?
Yeah, I have to agree with Tallman. Nothing new here. We still need pitching help, and that hasn't changed. It's really frustrating to me personally that it's taken this long, but I understand a lot of these types of deals don't happen until almost right at the deadline, which is coming up. We're just about 2 weeks away from it. So hopefully on our next recap, we might be able to talk about some of those new faces coming in, should we still be buyers. But I really want to take a look at some of the stats in the last 2 weeks here. Tallman mentioned that the bats have kind of died a little bit. And two guys that I've been disappointed in particularly are Christian Walker, who's averaging just 129 with 4 hits and 2 home runs in the last 2 weeks. Jake McCarthy batting just 200 with 4 hits and 2 RBIs in 8 games. But there are some guys that are still doing their job. I mean, Corbin Carroll, 242. We know he can hit better than that, but overall not too bad. He had 8 hits, 1 home run, and 4 RBIs as well. Alec Thomas in 7 games, batting 318 with 7 hits, 2 home runs, and 3 RBIs. So I'm glad to see that Alec Thomas is making the most of his appearances now that he's back up here in Phoenix and playing with our squad. Another guy to mention here, Lourdes Gurriel Jr., one of our all-stars, batting 273 with 9 hits, 2 home runs, and 5 RBIs. So there are some good spots in here, but overall, as a team, we need to do much better. And with runners in scoring position, we're not doing so hot either. On the pitching side of things, Zach Gallen, of course, is 1 of 1 in his last 2 starts with an ERA of 3, 10 strikeouts. And on the season, he has 130 strikeouts, which makes him 9th in the MLB. I know we've kind of had him in the Cy Young conversation, but if he doesn't rekindle his early season magic, I don't know how much longer he's going to stay in that conversation. Of course, we're all awaiting the return of Merrill Kelly, who's been out with that blood clot. And another guy who started to really take a slide back is Scott McGough. In 4 appearances, pitching only 4 2/3 innings, he has 8 strikeouts and 6 earned runs, which gives him an ERA of 11.57. Absolutely disgusting. So again, I will double down, triple down, quadruple down. This team needs some pitching help. And it is a question, I think, at this point is, are we still going to be buyers? Are we contenders or are we pretenders? Was the first half of this season just a blip and an enigma, or is it something that this team can replicate in the second half going forward? Plenty to get into, and like Tallman said, we'll talk about that on the Heat Check podcast, which we'll have out for you next week. But for now, I want to pass it over to Michael Benjamin so he can talk about our players of the first half, Corbin Carroll, Lourdes Gurriel Jr., and Zach Gallen.
We had to talk about these guys just coming off the heel of the All-Star game. And these guys have just been really the leaders in this clubhouse. And it's apparent through the numbers that they put up in the first half of the season. Corbin Carroll hitting 284 with 18 home runs, 48 RBIs, and a nice 26 stolen bases as well. Lourdes Gurriel Jr. hitting 270 with 21 doubles, 15 homers, and 54 RBIs. And I know we've had some caution for concern on Zach Gallen over the past couple of starts, but 11-4 record to start the season with a 3.14 ERA, about 9.5 Ks per 9, and less than 2 walks per 9 innings as well. If this team wants to continue to stay in the hunt and keep pushing for a possible pennant or at least a wild card spot, it's going to be on the backs of these guys.
Without a doubt, these 3 guys were all-stars for a reason. I mean, Corbin Carroll is our franchise player, and I don't think it's too early to say that. He's the new Paul Goldschmidt. He's the new Luis Gonzalez. He is the face of our organization. And Zach Gallen is maybe right there next to him. I remember back when we traded Jazz Chisholm for him, I wasn't so sure because Jazz was such a great prospect in our minor league system. But Gallen has shown that he is worthy of being our ace, and he's just in his mid-20s. So plenty of baseball that I think we can have left from him, and good baseball at that. I know I can be hard on him, but when you're the ace of our team, it warrants that pressure. And I think that he'll be able to right the ship. He has enough of the reserve and the will to be great. So we'll keep an eye on him. And he was an all-star for a reason. And Lourdes Gurriel Jr., bringing him in and making an impact early. These guys are going to be the cornerstones of our franchise in the second half and maybe into the future years. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that. But coming back from the All-Star break and a few rough outings, I want to pass it over to VSP Tallman for his 3 keys to the second half of this season coming up.
All right, 3 keys for the second half of the season. First, we're going to start Corbin Carroll's shoulder. Make sure that thing stays healthy. Make sure it stays in its socket, right? He needs to stay healthy for the second half of the season for us to have some type of success and to get back to our early season form. He's just been a spark plug for the team. So him succeeding is only going to bring up the guys around him. Our second key is going to be consistency on offense, staying aggressive on the base pass, and being smart on the base pass. Because I swear, the last 2 games I watched Jake McCarthy get picked off like 2 or 3 times. I think it was only 2 times. I'm being dramatic. Last key is going to be adding some pitching help at the deadline. We need a starter. We need some bullpen help. We need a closer. We don't need multiple. I don't care if they get multiple bullpen pitchers, but we need a good, clear-cut closer. Because right now, you guys mentioned Castro, McGuff guy. I mean, it's just not working out. Chafin's out there just chafing his butt off all over the place. So we need to add some pitching help. Like I said, I've been saying it over and over again. But the trick here is, you know how many other teams in baseball who have the same type of record or better record than the D-backs need that same thing? There's going to be a lot of buyers and probably not enough sellers. So let's see what happens.
Like I said, we're going to keep tabs on it. I think the one thing that bodes in our favor is we have a pretty robust farm system, and we'll hopefully have some pieces that we can entice teams to be able to make us the winners when it comes to those available pitching players and maybe some other pieces that have been rumored out there. But before we get out of here, I want to take a look at the upcoming series for the Arizona Diamondbacks. It's going to start on the road in Atlanta, taking on the Braves for a 3-game series. Then it's off to Cincinnati to take on the Reds for another 3-game stretch. We'll come back home to take on the St. Louis Cardinals and Paul Goldschmidt for a 3-game series and finish off the next 2 weeks at home against the Seattle Mariners. So make sure you're tuning in. We're going to keep coming at you with recaps every 2 weeks for the rest of the season, and you can find it right here on Valley Sports Plug. For Michael Benjamin and VSP Tallman, I'm Chris Patrick, and we'll see you next time. Peace.